This is U.S. total public debt outstanding. Title is a bit misleading. This is the federal debt outstanding. And you can see what our national debt has been doing. And we draw the line there in 2009 because that's where we passed that tipping point that we have talked about before. And that is way in our rearview mirror now in terms of distance that we have gone up. And please notice that the change in the slope isn't COVID. I mean, there was a radical change in slope following the Great Recession, then it moderated a little bit, but we've left the 80s and 90s and the first part of this century in the dust right now, and this rising trend has taken on a whole new life unto itself.
Doesn't even count unfunded liabilities.
Right.
In future, I mean, it's an amazing pile of debt. And as we think of the global, it's not just the United States.
No, gosh, no. No, I mean, you look at Japan, you look at China, the debt that they are carrying, it is amazing. And Alan and I, to our very bones, don't believe that just because we're the United States, we can get away with carrying this percent of debt relative to GDP. That's sort of like whistling through or past the cemetery, in my opinion.
That's right. I agree with you. When we look at the politics, I mean, this is exciting because of the presidential election year, right? We're just on the cusp of that presidential election year. There's all this talking and exciting things going on.
And it doesn't matter.
That's right. Just look at this. Let the numbers speak. Well, why don't you speak to the numbers?
Well, red is Republican, obviously. Blue are the Dems. And you see a little bit, well, it isn't there, but Kennedy, Johnson, and Carter are the only administrations that had a Congress aligned politically with them. Every other administration had to deal with some misalignment in the Congress. And whether you're talking about the second George Bush or Mr. Obama or Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, the numbers are the numbers, and you don't see any significant change in the country's ability to grow through this period.
And what I get excited about, Brian, in addition to the numbers, that their philosophies were different, how they approached the economy, how they approached the world, how they approached people. Everything was different about these people, except the rate of growth in GDP.
Yep.
So go ahead and vote in 2024. It's really important, but understand.
More about social policies than it is economic policies.
That's
right. What it boils down to.
Absolutely. GDP. And I like the rise, obviously. It's easy to first talk about the rise going up to the 2030s. There's a lot of prosperity in there.
Yeah, we have that 24 little bit of downward that we have talked about before, but you've got to keep your eye on that rise. That's where you want to make as much wealth as you possibly can and make sure that you have it locked down at the very least as we go through the top of this cycle. This is a big deal. There's a lot of money to be made on the way up here. And for all the reasons that Alan talked about, those pillars to our forecast, we see this erosion occurring over about 6-year span of time post 2029. Let's be clear also, and we say this all the time, we have it beginning in 2030 because that's what makes the most sense when we look at all the numbers. Could it begin in 28? Could it begin in 33 instead of 30? The answer is yes. This is economics. That's a long ways out. And the timing really doesn't matter as long as you are prepared for that decline, whether it comes a little bit early or a little bit late in terms of the spectrum of looking out 20 years, it really shouldn't matter. You're going to have no downside to being ready to that downturn.
Now, I have some lists for you. We have some lists for you, excuse me, and they're not absolute, all right? I don't want you to take this as some sort of guarantee. But as we looked at how these have compared to GDP in the past, much as we just did with industrial production for some of those other series, and we looked at how they compare to the industrial production as well, they will likely give you a better ride, likely give you more opportunities as you go forward. I don't want you to take any of this as a guarantee of any kind. I think that would be a mistake. But the one that caught my eye, Brian, was median earnings of union members in downturns holds. And just something to consider. Computer systems with AI and everything going on, that's a pretty easy one to
in the cyber world, right?
In the cyber world, yeah, absolutely. Local government employment could feel some pain, but that usually comes later. I have a daughter that works for local government, and they're not quick to respond to economic.
They're not quick to respond to anything.
No, they're not. It's just some opportunities. When I look at government spending, if you're a business or if you are employed in the government sector, these can do very well in that time period or slow down certainly, but the more unrest there is in the world, the more uncertainty there is in the world, it's hard for some of these things to go away. And when we look at defense and space equipment, that's actually pretty surprisingly resilient. And I think space is going to continue to grow thanks to SpaceX.
My caveat to this, Alan, is we're talking about a decline in GDP that is 2x the low side of normal. So there's going to be some wings clipped here.
Yep.
Flat may be great, but flat's going to beat the heck out of decline in a lot of other areas.
Even a 2% decline is going to feel a lot better than what may happen in the automobile industry. And all kinds of opportunities in healthcare, driven by the aging demographic, expanding population. It's pretty easy to understand that one. And with social programs in place, we'll continue to see money spent on healthcare, and the wholesale trade industry will continue to be moving product, and we're going to see people continue to go to the doctor. I mean, this is not going to be where that industry really comes
Did you look at funeral homes and morticians?
I did.
And?
They didn't make the cut.
Really?
Yeah. Now, they may make the cut in the Great Depression or in the Depression because of the sheer amount of us boomers that will be passing through their doors. Personal care does well because of the social safety nets that are in place. And it seems like these wouldn't necessarily do well, but in the Great Recession and in 15, 16 downturn, and even when we snapped back from COVID and online during COVID, these areas did do well. And they would suggest that there's some real potential for some shelter in the 2030s.
Right. I would certainly be interested in here. What about beer, Alan, and wine, alcohol, spirits?
I did look at those, and what you find is that they do well, but there's a trading down in quality.
Ah.
So that, I don't want to name brands because then I'll get in trouble
you'll
with
get
somebody.
in trouble with somebody, so, okay.
Yeah.
But the overall industry does okay?
Yeah, it doesn't boom, but there's certainly a need for alcohol in that time period. And then when we look at what's happening in energy, this is also worthy of a caveat, but right now with all the emphasis on climate change, with all the concern there is out there generationally, across generations and in businesses these days, it suggests that these will do well as we go forward. They have done well through the COVID period. They did well through the Great Recession of 2008-9, and they show signs that they will do well as we go into the next generation, unless a new technology comes along and disrupts this whole thing.
Well, in the bottom, you and I talked about nuclear power plants in the United States are aging out. So unless there's a significant investment made or a new technology applied, that one could be iffy too by the time we're cruising through 2030 through 36.
Very, very true. It's also a cultural thing with nuclear energy because there is new technology. It's much more efficient, much safer than it ever has been, but it's still, people remember Chernobyl.
Well, it's not even considered green by a lot of people.
Right. So it's, in any event, it's put a little question mark after that one, but understand there are some opportunities there as we go forward. If you're not already following ITR with free content, we have blogs that lead you to. We have Trends Talks, which are podcasts that you can turn into. We also have Brian's Fed Watch, which is a weekly discussion.
Every Friday afternoon, it's 3 to 6 minutes. I talk about what's going on at the Fed, what it means, and what to expect.
And if you're not an insider, it'll give you a chance to learn more about how you can stay in touch and the webinars that are open to you and a whole bunch of other things. So please use the QR code. Thank you for being with us today.
Because this is our venue, we could probably even mention the price of being an insider, right?
I'm not sure I know, so you go right ahead.
Oh, $20 a month.
Okay, thanks.
It's all it takes to stay more deeply connected.